Hey, what's going on, guys? Jason Frausto for TennisUnleashed.net, and welcome to our 2024 US Open Men's Final Preview and Prediction video. We're looking at the final between Jannik Sinner and Taylor Fritz. If you want to find out who I think is going to win this final and why, stay tuned. It's coming up next. So we know we've had a very wild US Open this year, right, in 2024. Carlos Alcaraz went down in straight sets in the second round. Another favorite, Novak Djokovic, went down in the third round to Alexei Popyrin. So this US Open was blown wide open by some of those early round losses. The only top seed in the top four that fulfilled their seed was Jannik Sinner, and he's meeting Taylor Fritz in the finals here. This is going to be Taylor Fritz's first Grand Slam final, and for Sinner, it's his second. He won the Australian Open in the beginning of 2024, and the question is, can Sinner collect his second Grand Slam title? And for Fritz to get here, right, he had to upset a couple seeds that were ranked above him. He had to beat Casper Ruud, the number 8 seed, which he did. And he followed that up by beating Alexander Zverev before defeating France's Tiafoe in the semifinals. And speaking of those semifinals, let's look at the semifinal that Jannik Sinner had to go through, right? He ended up playing Jack Draper in the semi, the number 25 seed from Great Britain, right, who's had a breakthrough tournament here. Lefty, really strong backhand, and a good forehand and a good serve as well. Let's look at some of the keys to that match and how Sinner beat Draper. We had some pretty tough, humid conditions today, right? Humidity up in the higher 60s when Draper and Sinner played their match. Air temperature was around 80 degrees, and at one point in the second set, Draper vomited on the court a couple times. The referee, the official, went to stop the match, but Draper said that he wanted to continue play. So that was a really interesting thing, just the physicality of the match today. These guys were cranking the ball, running all over the court, and the conditions were a little bit tough to play in, so Draper had some issues with vomiting on the court, and Sinner took advantage of that by continuing to work him in the third set. Some other keys in this match were what I talked about in my preview, right, for the semifinals for the men. I talked a lot about how Jack Draper tilts his forehand quite a bit, kind of that next-gen forehand, whatever you want to call it, but tilts his forehand quite a bit on the forehand side, and that can be a technical liability because you have to get the racket from this position and get it back down into contact on time. And when you're playing somebody like Jannik Sinner, who has so much pace on his forehand and backhand, he's not going to give you time to get out of this position and back into contact. So if you look at the stats on Draper's forehand side, we saw 19 unforced errors, right? And just 9 on his backhand side. So plus 10 on his unforced errors on his forehand side versus his backhand. So against somebody with Sinner's pace, that technique can break down just a little bit. And when we get to this level, and right, we're at the top tier level, we're splitting hairs in terms of what makes a difference. And sometimes that's technique. Another key to this semifinal match was serve quality. So if we look at Sinner's serve quality numbers, right, we see 235 for serve rating for Sinner in this match. Draper at just 133. A lot of that had to do with Draper's second serve, though. If we look at the stats in this match, we can see Draper double faulted 10 times compared to just 1 double fault for Sinner. And not only was Sinner's first serve better, but his return of serve was also better rating-wise as well. According to the ATP website, right, Sinner had a 192 in his serve return rating, and Draper was at 98. So almost a plus 100 scenario for Sinner on the return of serve. Another thing Sinner did really well to improve his return of serve against that lefty Draper serve was he really dropped back far behind the baseline in certain situations on some first serves and also some second serves, so he could take big cuts at the ball and improve the quality and power of his return of serve. So now that we've broken down semifinal number 1, right, Draper and Sinner, let's talk about semifinal number 2, which just occurred a few hours ago. We had France's Tiafoe, Taylor Fritz. These guys ended up going 5 sets, and Tiafoe was the one who really owned Fritz for the first 3.5 sets of this match until something drastically changed. And again here, just like the Draper and Sinner match, if we look at some of the quality scores that the ATP Tour provides, right? Looking at the serve quality score, we've got Tiafoe up 167 compared to Fritz's 159, and that was for the entire 5 sets of the match. So Tiafoe was the better server in this match. If we look at the return of serve rating, right, Tiafoe at 239 compared to Fritz at 189. So the two most important shots in the game, the serve and the return, Tiafoe was the better player for the entirety of the match. And it wasn't just the serve and return where Tiafoe beat Fritz in this match. He also beat him off the ground. So if you look at the ground strokes, right, forcing errors on your opponent, Tiafoe forced errors on Fritz 18 times compared to Fritz forcing Tiafoe into 11 errors. So Tiafoe was the superior player on serve, return, and off the ground. So how does he lose a match where he's the better player in every single major category? The biggest thing that let Francis down in this match was conditioning, right? So in the middle of the third set, there was a really long exchange. I think it was 31 shots between Fritz and Tiafoe. And after that exchange, there was some point where Tiafoe gave up at the end of the point because it was so exhausting. Now, that one point didn't get Francis tired for the entire match. It's a cumulative effect, but these guys were trading back and forth in a lot of, yes, shorter points with a lot of big shots, but there were some really long exchanges in this match with a lot of really big hitting, and that physicality is what tires you out. The bigger that you hit, the more that you throw your body into shots, the more tiring that can become, especially over the course of 5 sets. So once Fritz and Tiafoe had that really long exchange in the 4th set, there were a few other long points played after that, and you could see that Francis's legs gave out at that point in the match. And another big sign that the legs have kind of left you in a match is when your first serve percentage starts to drop. So we noticed shortly after that, when Francis had to serve, all of a sudden, right, he can't make a first serve because there's no legs left to get up into that service motion. Technically, it's failing you. Your legs are failing you. So your technique starts to suffer and your percentages suffer. And then Taylor Fritz is getting looks at a lot more second serves and is able to step up and do some damage knowing he's getting second serves instead of having to return those big first serves. And then once we got into the 5th set, right, Fritz collects a break or two. Tiafoe breaks back one game, but we can see Tiafoe is completely gone and there's no way he's going to get a second win in this match. He's just completely physically gone and Fritz takes it home. So that brings us to the 2024 US Open men's final that we only half expected, right? I think most people expected Sinner to get to the final, but Taylor Fritz was not on everybody's bingo card as a US Open finalist, but Fritz becomes the first American man to make the final since 2006. And if he could win it, he'd be the first American male player to win it since Andy Roddick won it back in 2003. So it's been 20 plus years since an American player has won the men's US Open title. Can Fritz get it done? If we just look at the head-to-head matchup on this, Fritz and Sinner are tied at 1-1. The last meeting came in Indian Wells in 2023, where Fritz lost that match in 3 close sets to Sinner, and the previous match was a straight set victory in 2021 by Fritz, which again, that's 3 years ago for Sinner, very early on in his career. But I do think this is a pretty good overall matchup for Fritz. Let's look at what the keys are to winning this match. The first big key in this match is how well Jannik Sinner's forehand technique holds up. Now you might think Sinner's forehand technique is perfect, but I've pointed it out a few different times in different videos that Sinner's forehand technique is slightly flawed. And what I mean by that is when he goes into the backswing, he has an unnecessary component to his forehand swing where he takes his right hand and takes the racket strings and kind of tilts them up and back towards the back fence like this. This is an unnecessary extra move. And I do believe he gets extra spin by doing this, but it's an unnecessary extra move that can cost him if the ball is hit very deep to his forehand side or hit very heavy or very hard deep to the forehand side. It can end up causing you to not be able to get back into contact quick enough with this extra move, which can cause some mishits or accidentally hitting the ball short, which then leaves you open to have your opponent getting aggressive against you. So besides that one little thing in Sinner's forehand, it's completely clean, but that one little thing can make a big difference in a final. Now, will Fritz be able to actually exploit that? That's another question. He's got to hit deep, he's got to hit hard, and he's got to hit heavy consistently to expose it. The second big key factor in this match is Jannik Sinner's left wrist injured? Because we know he had a very long point, a super highlight point against Jack Draper in his match. And on that point, he actually fell to the ground while sprinting towards the back wall to hit a lob. And after he braced himself, he kind of winced a little bit, got back up, smacked an unbelievable forehand winner. But when that point ended, he immediately went to the towel, started holding his left wrist, looked up at his box with some concern. So the question is, how injured is that left wrist? And will that affect anything on Sunday? And from Fritz's side of the net, the first thing you got to do is you really have to test that backhand side, right? Because that's where that left wrist is going to come into play. So Taylor really needs to test that left hand by hitting a lot of balls to the backhand just in the warm-up to see if he sees any signs of wincing, pain, anything that could be off on that side, because if it is, he's got to attack there pretty strong. The third big key to this match is Taylor Fritz has to serve above 60% first serves in to have any chance to beat Sinner in this match. Against Tiafoe, Fritz's first serve percentage dipped down to 58%, which is the lowest it had been in a couple rounds, right? Against Zverev, he was above 60%. So you got to keep that first serve percentage high to avoid hitting a lot of second serves to Sinner, because on second serve situations, Sinner's going to step up and he's going to crank big shots on his forehand and his backhand side, do damage and take control of the point early on and get Fritz running. And the last big key to this match is Fritz has to play incredible defense to have any chance whatsoever of beating Sinner in this match. Fritz does look to be moving a little bit better than he has in the past and defending a little bit better. But against somebody like Sinner, who's bringing major firepower on his forehand and backhand side, if Fritz's defense is an absolutely top tier elite level, he has no chance to win this match. And when I talk about top tier elite level, the best movers in the world can defend 4 or 5 aggressive shots in a row and hit deep balls off them or neutralize those shots to stay in points and continue to run and direct balls well. If Fritz can't do that, he has no chance against Sinner if he can only survive 1 or 2 of those hyper-aggressive shots. So who am I taking to win this match? I'm going to take Sinner here to collect his second slam title and second on hard courts over Fritz in 4 sets, possibly 3 sets. It depends if Fritz has a really good serving set and can win a tiebreaker against Sinner. Otherwise, again, I'm looking at Sinner probably here in 4 sets. Relatively competitive. We'll see how that left wrist is. If he's not injured, he should win this match and take a career head-to-head lead over Fritz of 2-1. All right, guys, that wraps it up for our 2024 Men's US Open Finals preview and prediction video. If you found this video helpful or you feel like you learned something today, make sure you hit that like and subscribe button. I'm Jason Frausto for tennisunleashed.net. I'll see you next time.